The board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaquero. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed.
Here.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderwoman Boyd. 17 present.
Quorum being present, I'll ask everybody in the chambers and the galleries who's able to stand to please rise for prayer. Giving all honor to God, Almighty God, source of all authority, we humbly ask guidance in our deliberations and wisdom in our conclusions. Amen. We've dispensed with line item 3, introduction of honored guests. Any introduction of honored guests? All the one from the 14th.
Mr. President and esteemed colleagues, I'd like to have as my honored guest Demetrius Alfred, President of Firefighters Local 73, and Nathan Lett. And I think that's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's welcome. Alderman from the 21st.
President, I would like to welcome Mr. Percy Green III, the Vice President of Fire, and Captain O'Toole with the Sheriff's Department.
Alderman from the 23rd. We have to let you jump the line here.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'd like to have as my honored guest today, Fred Searcy of the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters, and I am so thrilled to be back.
All right. Let's welcome the Alderman from the 23rd back. Welcome back, Alderman from the 23rd. Alderwoman from the 13th.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'd like to have as my honored guests this morning Kevin Haynes and Jeff Hans from the St. Louis, Kansas City Carpenters Regional Council. Thank you.
Alderwoman from the 28th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Fellow members of the board, I would like to have as my honored guest today Pam Ross. She's an engaged constituent in the 28th and also a trustee at the St. Louis Community College. Welcome.
Welcome, Pam. Alderman from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I'd like to have as my honored guests today some folks in the gallery, our Coro Fellows who are up there. I apologize, I don't know your names, but welcome to the Board of Aldermen.
Welcome, Coro fellows. Alderman from the 8th.
Mr. President, this morning I'd like to have as my honored guest Ms. Novena Shimov, and she is a new financial analyst with the mayor's office and constituent from the 8th Ward. So welcome. Thank you.
Oh, welcome. Alderman from the 12th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to introduce as my special guest Chris Pickle from AT&T.
Welcome, Chris. Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from the 10th, I'd like to wrap us up.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, we're gathered here on November 16th. This is Party with Your Teddy Bear Day. There's nothing more I can say about that than that. But today, November 16th, 2018, please mark your calendars. The Delmar Loop Trolley is scheduled to run. Let's all hope maybe it will.
Give a
Thank you.
big round of applause for that. Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on approval of the minutes. Madam Clerk, approval of the minutes.
November 2nd, 2018, approval of minutes.
Alderman from the 18th.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for approval of the November 2nd minutes.
Moved by the Alderman from the 18th. Entertain a second on the motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in A, B, and C of the agenda and have been placed in the alderman's mailboxes.
We would dispense with line item 7. Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? Alderman from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I request to move Board Bill 147 from the Perfection Informal Calendar to the Perfection Calendar.
Madam Clerk, please place Board Bill 147 at the end of the regular perfection calendar. Would anyone like to take any further bills or resolutions from any of our informal calendars? Would anyone like to take any further bills or resolutions from any of our informal calendars? We will dispense with line items 8 through 10, first reading of board bills.
Board Bill 161, sponsored by Alderwoman Negracia, an ordinance pertaining to special use districts establishing the Lafayette Square Area Special Use District and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 162, sponsored by Alderwoman Rice, an ordinance approving the redevelopment plan for 4102 Shaw Boulevard. Board Bill 163, sponsored by Alderwoman Howard, an ordinance amending Ordinance 66384, approved July 31st, 2004 as follows. Section 1 of Ordinance 66384 is amended by adding a new subsection, Section 10.04.145, to be titled Animals Putting Persons in Fear, Adoption of Strays, Dangerous Dogs, Tethering, Confinement, and Treatment of Dogs and Cats on Owner's Guardian's Property, Relinquishment of Owned Dogs and Cats to the Animal Regulation Center, Neuter Assistance and Education Funds, Interfering with the Health Officer or Agent, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 164, sponsored by Alderman Boyd, an ordinance amending Section 2 of Ordinance 68604, approved March 16th and codified in Title 2012 of the Revised Code by adding a new subsection to Section 2, Section 2012 of 025 to Ordinance 686024 to be titled Naming and Renaming of Streets and Public Parks. Board Bill 165, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, and pursuant to Ordinance 68937, an ordinance authorizing the honorary street name Cedric the Entertainer Way, which shall begin at the intersection of Olive Street and North Vandervanter and run east on Olive Street to the intersection of Olive Street and North Spring Avenue. Board Bill 166, sponsored by Alderman Rhodey, an ordinance determining the tax increment financing plans listed in Exhibit A or making satisfactory progress under the proposed time schedule for completion of projects therein, whereas the tax increment financing plans and projects listed in Exhibit A were approved by the Board of Aldermen. Board Bill 167, sponsored by Alderman Ornowitz, pursuant to Ordinance 68937, an ordinance authorizing the honorary street name Estella M. Daly Way, which shall begin at the intersection of Morgan Ford Road and Upton Court and run east on the 4100 block of Upton Court to its end. Board Bill 168, sponsored by Alderwoman Spencer, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 3555 through 59 California. Board Bill 169, sponsored by Alderman Ornowitz, an ordinance authorizing and directing the Director of City Department of Health to enter into and execute an opioid crisis response service contract with the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services in order to help to fund some personnel costs, auto travel reimbursement, and equipment supplies for a crisis resource response team upon approval of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment containing an emergency clause. That is the extent of first reading of board bills.
Reference to committee.
To the HUD Committee, Board Bill 161, 166, Neighborhood Development Committee, Board Bill 162 and 168. To the Health and Human Services Committee, Board Bill 163 and 169. To the Streets Committee, Board Bill 164, 165, and 167. That is extent of reference to committee.
Second reading.
We have none.
We will dispense with line item 14, perfection consent.
Board Bill 150, sponsored by Alderwoman Negracia, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to conditionally vacate
Can we have some order? Please proceed.
above surface, surface, and subsurface rights for vehicle, equestrian, and pedestrian travel in the north-south alley, the remaining portion of the east-west alley and north-south alley in City Block 2273 as bounded by Union Pacific Railroad 21st, Gratiot, and 22nd, and a portion of Gratiot beginning east of 22nd and extending eastwardly to the portion of Gratiot previously vacated by Ordinance 65340. Board Bill 152, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, pursuant to Ordinance 68937, an ordinance authorizing the honorary street name Reverend Dr. W.H. Goatley Jr., which shall begin at the intersection of North Leffenwell and Franklin and run west on Franklin to the intersection of T.E. Hundley and Franklin. Board Bill 129, sponsored by Alderman Williamson, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission to change the zoning of property as indicated on a district map from D, multiple family dwelling district, and H, area commercial district, to the H, area commercial district for the portion of the parcel known as Lot A on the attached Exhibit A, to the D, multiple family dwelling district for a portion of the parcel known as Lot B in City Block 5520 and containing an emergency clause. That is the extent of perfection consent.
Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion for the perfection consent calendar.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for adoption of the perfection consent calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 12th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Board bills for perfection.
Board Bill 147, sponsored by Alderman Coulter and Ogilvy, excuse me, an ordinance revising Section 1 of Ordinance Number 59982, approved July 31st, 1986, codified as Section 208400 of the City Revised Code of Ordinances pertaining to the last date on which a candidate may withdraw from primary election from 40 days prior to the date of primary election to 50 days prior to the date of primary election, and containing an emergency clause.
Alderman from the 7th, you recognize on the perfection of Board Bill 147.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I move to perfect Board Bill 147.
Moved by the Alderman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderman from the 24th. Alderman, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I apologize to my colleagues for my absence last week and thank the Alderman from the 24th for his assistance with some of these other what should be routine election bills. The only bill we're attempting to perfect today is Board Bill 147, which would change the date for withdrawal of a candidate from 40 days to 50 days prior to the election. Currently, under a city law, absentee voting begins 6 weeks prior to the primary, which is 42 days. So in rare instances, we've had some examples of when votes have been cast absentee for a candidate that then later withdraws from the race 2 days later. So all we're seeking to do here is to line up these timelines and basically say, if you want to withdraw, you got to withdraw 50 days prior to the race, okay? The election board, they came to the committee and they said that's ample time for them to print new ballots if need be, if someone were to withdraw from the race. So all this board bill does is simply move that withdraw deadline from 40 days to 50 days for a primary municipal election.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 1st.
President, members of the board, I actually had questions about this bill. I said I did agree with it, but I had some real concerns about that time frame. I did call over to the Board of Election and then ended up speaking to Gary Stoff, and it wasn't nearly as much time as you thought, because he didn't remember that you have to print ballots up and you have to then mail them back out. So there's a very small window of opportunity. It is better, but what he and I both agreed on, because we went through we walked through the upcoming March election and the upcoming election in April, is how it would affect that. And so it would be much better, but unless they already have the ballots over at the printers, what he and I talked about, and then they could just then take off any names that withdrew, that if they didn't have it already at the printer, that there could be some problem, because not only do you have to get them printed and get back to the Board of Election, but you also have to mail them out, because that's when voting begins, and so they're supposed to be there. So that time that they talked about being a lot of time end up shrinking. And he and I talked about coming back and having a drop dead date, if you will, of when they have to have ballots over to the printer, so that we won't have maybe a later board or something like that, that if you don't get your ballots over there in time, then we're right back to what you're saying could happen and has happened before, which is that people withdraw after people have already started absentee ballots. So it was never that I was opposed to it. I just wanted us to get to where we were really trying to get to and then not have to do it. But he and I agreed that we could talk about a way to give a date certain that we would have to have our ballots ordered so that we wouldn't use up that window of opportunity. And because of that, I am supportive of the bill.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 7th, you recognize to close.
I renew my motion.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderman from the 24th, that we perfect Board Bill 147. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That is the extent of board bills for perfection.
Alderman from the 7th, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I move to suspend the rules for the purposes of moving Board Bill 147 to the third reading consent calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderman from the 23rd and the 24th. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Negracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Odenberg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaquero. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Say aye. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he said aye.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Martin. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Boyd. 24 aye votes.
By a vote, you stay in the motion of the Alderman from the 7th and suspend the rules for the purposes of placing Board Bill 147 on the third reading consent calendar. Madam Clerk, please place Board Bill 147 at the tail end of the third reading consent calendar.
So noted.
Third reading consent.
Board Bill 141, 151, and 147.
Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion for the third reading consent calendar.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for adoption of the third reading consent calendar.
Yes. Madam Clerk, since we suspend the rules on Board Bill 147, can you just read that one for the record?
Sure. Board Bill 147, sponsored by Alderman Kotar and Alderman Ogilvy, an ordinance revising Section 1 of Ordinance Number 59982, approved July 31st, 1986, codified as Section 208400 of the City Revised Code of Ordinances pertaining to the last date on which a candidate may withdraw from primary election from 40 days prior to the date of primary election to 50 days prior to the date of primary election and containing an emergency clause.
Alderman from the 18th.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for adoption of the third reading consent calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 18th. Entertain second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 7th. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaquero. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Boyd. 24 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion. Alderman from the 18th and 3rd read and finally passed the aforementioned bills. Third reading, report of engrossments.
Board Bill 140, 144.
You have to do these all at once, so just Board Bill
Okay.
140.
Board Bill 140 sponsored by Alderwoman Spencer, Gunther, Green, Ornowitz, Navarro, and Ingracia. An ordinance amending Section 1 of Ordinance Number 62571 pertaining to exemptions from the graduate business license tax codified as Section 807020 of the Revised Code of the City by adding a new subsection 5 to Section 1 of the Ordinance 62571, creating an exemption from the graduate business license for local farmers selling their agricultural products and products produced therefrom directly to consumers solely at farmers market and containing an emergency clause.
Alderman from the 20th, you recognize on the third reading and final passage of Board Bill 140.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for final passage of Board Bill
140.
140.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 20th, seconded by the Alderman from the 15th. Alderman, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill will simply provide an exemption for business licenses for farmers to participate in farmers markets here in the city of St. Louis. It was brought to the attention of several of us by the Tower Grove Farmers Market that being a farmer and participating in farmers markets in the city of St. Louis is a pretty different process than it is to participate in a farmers market in St. Louis County. When the Tower Grove Market expanded and opened a market in Brentwood this summer, their vendors noticed that the process is a lot smoother just across the arbitrary city-county line. And with this bill, what we're trying to do is get the process of operating a farmers market here in the city to be more similar to that process in St. Louis County. What we don't want to have happen is vendors leaving the marketplace here in the city and working exclusively in St. Louis County because the cost is lower and the process is easier. So this is one step in trying to retain that economic activity and, of course, the cultural hub that farmers markets tend to be here in the city of St. Louis.
All right, thank you, Alderwoman. Any discussion? Any discussion? Alderwoman from the 14th?
Woman from the 20th, yield for a question.
Alderwoman from the 20th will yield a question to the Alderman.
Absolutely.
Alderwoman from the 14th, please proceed.
What constitutes a farmer?
The definition is in the bill. The definition is somebody who grows their own produce and sells it. This is really designed for small-scale farmers, not a big-scale farmer, but a small-scale farmer who would grow something that would be immediately sellable to the public. So wheat, for example, would not really be something that you're going to find at a farmer's market, but somebody who would be growing tomatoes on a smaller
So what do
scale
they
might be.
present, I mean, as part of their licensing? What
In St. Louis County, there's no licensing required. So this is just an exemption for coming in for the weekend and just selling on a Saturday. So
so
again,
they don't need a business license
they
at all?
would not need a business license, that's right. Just for a farmer. This, the license collector's office, when asked to kind of enumerate how much this might cost, said it was sort of, it's my understanding it's sort of negligible. This just creates, it's a very small number of people, but it also establishes some goodwill with the folks that are participating in our farmers markets.
So this is just for our farmers markets that are designated
Yes,
places?
absolutely.
What about Soulard?
Soulard is a farmer's market. Now, in talking with the director there, while they do have a couple of local farmers that operate there, the majority of vendors that operate at Soulard Market are resellers. So they're not actually growing bananas, for example. You see a lot of vendors there that are selling bananas. They're purchasing those at Produce Row, and they're not actually growing them. This is only for local growers.
Those people would still be required to get a business
That's
license?
correct. That's
Okay.
correct. And if you're selling something like soaps or something other than just vending, that's right. So this is just for the farmer that's coming in from the
Selling the
weekend.
goat cheese and the
Not the goat cheese. This would just be for selling your
products from the farm.
You can do some value-added products. So in that case, I guess you could, somebody selling goat cheese could fall into that category as a milk farmer. Yes.
And they're selling their meats.
As
and
long as the cheese that they're making comes from
their animals.
Yes, that they're farming. So it is a pretty small group of
Okay.
people. But again, what we're doing is trying to mirror what happens in St. Louis County. The fear was that our farmers markets would just leave for across the border and be more successful on that side.
So I guess for lack of a better word, it would be for like artisan farmers.
That's correct. I would agree with that. And
Okay.
this kind of comes in line with something we did last year. We passed a bill that allows backyard farmers to sell on site and community gardens to sell on site without that licensing. This is just a way of promoting that sort of activity here in the city.
My concern was the farmers that are buying and reselling, and
Yeah,
that's what I was
absolute-
like, that seems to be a bigger market.
That is a bigger market, and that we're not touching that here. This is simply for, as you kind of parted out, the artisan farmer.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the first.
Mr. President, members of the board, if the Alderman from the 20th would yield.
Alderwoman from the 20th, yield to the Alderman.
Absolutely.
Please proceed, Alderwoman.
Alderwoman, is this a permanent exemption? So could they come in at all times of the year and be exempted, or is this a limited amount of times that they could come in and not be required for a tax? Because I know that we have some other small businesses, and they're really small, and they still have to pay the taxes. So.
And I take issue with that as well. I think the really small businesses here in the city of St. Louis I would be very amenable to having exemptions for all small businesses. I think we overtax and over-license here in the city, especially as compared to surrounding areas. It's a real burden, especially on those small business owners. I would be happy to create exemptions for those as well. But to your question more specifically about if this goes year-round, this is just for those instances where you're participating in a designated farmer's market. So if you are going to be operating on a day-to-day basis here in the city, no matter how small of a farmer you are, you would need a license. If you're only coming in on the weekends to participate in a farmer's market, then this does create an exemption just for that activity alone.
And my question is then, how will they know the difference? And I know what happened with peddling. In some places you can peddle, in some that
Yes.
you can't. And people get really confused about peddling and think that they can peddle. I got a license, and then it's like, no, you can't peddle here. So is there a way for them to know when they are permitted to do so?
And that's a really good question. Right now, all of those questions really rely on the license collectors, enforcement officers to educate. And we do have a lot of staff in that office, so hopefully they should be able to take care of making sure that folks know that. In addition, we're going to be working with the health department to update the permitting process for farmers markets so that the farmers markets themselves would be able to better inform their farmers. And this is, again, only pertaining to designated farmers markets and trying to encourage that direct farmer to consumer behavior that we want to see. It's the most healthy way you can provide food to people.
You envision the farmer then going to the farmer's market and they be able to tell them, because you're a farmer that's just coming in here for this,
Yes.
you do not have to do this, and be able to give them maybe Madam License Collector would have some kind of printed information that they could give to them so that they would be sure, so that then an inspector wouldn't come in and say, no, you are required to have a license.
That's right. So the farmers, when you participate in a farmer's market, you generally pay a fee. And as part of that, the farmer's market should be providing a value to you and some information, much like if you are a vendor participating in a large event and you're setting up a booth. Generally speaking, the event coordinator would be able to tell you the permits and things like that you need. In this case, hopefully, it would be incumbent upon the farmer's market to educate their farmers and their vendors on what they need to participate in that.
All right, I have no further questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 20th, you recognize to close on the third reading of
Thank you,
Board
Mr.
Bill 140.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I think what we want to make sure that we do here in the city is look at the way that our surrounding areas are interacting with the business community, even small business communities like local farmers here in the state of Missouri and within the city. And if there's an opportunity for us to improve and make more similar the experience of operating a small business here in the city, more similar to that in St. Louis County, I think we should take those opportunities so that we're not losing businesses and business opportunities and economic activity to surrounding communities. And with that, I ask for your favorable consideration on Board Bill 140.
All right, is there a request for previous roll?
I would request previous roll.
Hearing no objection, there's been an objection to previous roll. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard.
All right, thank you.
Alderwoman Green. Alderman Odenberg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaquero. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Boyd. 25 aye votes.
By a vote, sustain the motion of the Alderman from the 20th and third read and finally passed Board Bill 140.
Board Bill 144 sponsored by Alderman Kotar and Alderman Ogilvy, an ordinance amending Section 2 of Ordinance Number 58267, approved March 19, 1981, and codified as Section 208060 of the Revised Code of Ordinances of the City pertaining to the candidate payments to the political party upon whose ticket he or she proposes to run as candidate and seeks nomination 1% of the annual salary of the office for which he or she is a candidate, to permit a candidate to submit said payment to the Board of Election Commissioners at the time the candidate files his or her declaration of candidacy and containing an emergency clause.
Alderman from the 7th, you recognize on the third read and final passage of Board Bill 144.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I move to third read and final pass, Board Bill 144.
Moved by the Alderman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderman from the 8th. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I think this had a lengthy discussion last week. All this Board Bill 144 seeks to do is to codify what is already practiced at the Board of Election Commissioners, which is when a candidate for primary writes their check for their filing fee, which is 1% of the salary of the office they're seeking. They write that check to the particular central committee for whatever party's nomination they're seeking, and then they can give that check as proposed here to the Board of Election Commissioners, who will then send it to the appropriate central committee treasurer. Instead of the candidate, in some instances there's been confusion, the candidates are trying to track down these treasurers and hand them the check. They can just bring their check down when they file, give it to the election board, and the election board will get that check to the appropriate central committee treasurer. That's all we're seeking to do here.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 7th, you recognize closed.
I renew my motion.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 8th, that we third read and finally pass Board Bill 144. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar.
Aye.
Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Odenberg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaquero. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Boyd. 25 aye votes.
By vote, you stay in the motion. Alderman from the 7th and third read and finally pass Board Bill 144.
Board Bill 145, sponsored by Alderman Kotar and Alderman Ogilvy, an ordinance revising Section 208120 of the City Revised Code of Ordinances pertaining to the Board of Election Commissioners preparing sample ballots so as to provide for the placement of candidates on said ballots in the order in which they are to appear on the official ballot rather than alphabetically as is currently provided, and containing an emergency clause.
Alderman from the 7th, you recognize on the third read and final passage of Board Bill 145.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I move to third read and final pass, Board Bill 145.
Moved by the Alderman from the 7th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 8th. Any discussion?
Oh, thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Very briefly, Board Bill 145, simply another cleanup for the election board here. Simply will require the sample ballot that's printed and mailed out by the election board to list the candidates in the order they will appear on the ballot. That seems like something that should already happen, but under this old law we have here on the books, they appear in alphabetical order instead of the order they will actually appear on the ballot. This will make the sample ballot that is printed and distributed by the Board of Elections consistent with the actual ballot. That's all we're seeking to do here.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Alderman from the 1st.
Mr. President, members of the board, I rise to oppose this board bill, and I think I said before, and I'll say it again, there's a reason why they didn't have them in order. Because I was talking to Gary Stoff, the Republican director, which I don't understand because we have a Democratic director. But when you call over there and ask for the Democrat, you get the Republican, so that's interesting. But anyway, there's a reason not to have them in order, and the real reason is because when people get sample ballots, they look at it as order of importance, and the first and the last, they get more votes. And so I like that it's a little mixed up, and that it's not the same thing as we get. And that's one of the reasons that they said when they were first doing this back many years ago, is that they didn't want to give the appearance that the Board of Election was taking any position about who you should vote for first. So for that reason, I am opposed to it and will not support it, and I request a roll call, please.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 7th, you recognize the close.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I would just point out that the election board has requested this change because in recent years they have found that this has caused confusion when we're sending out sample ballots that list candidates in one order, and then on the actual ballot they appear in a different order. So these will make those two consistent. Again, the election board requested this change. So I would ask for your favorable consideration and your aye vote on Board Bill 145, and I renew my motion.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 8th, that we third read and final pass Board Bill 145. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Alderman Bosley. Oh. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Odenberg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaquero. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed. President Reed. Oh, I didn't hear. Okay. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Boyd. 20 aye votes, 4 no votes, and 1 present.
By vote, you stay in the motion, Alderman from the 7th and third read and finally passed Board Bill 145. Madam Clerk, at the request of the sponsor of Board Bill 122, please place Board Bill 122 on the third reading and informal calendar.
So noted. Okay, so that is the extent of third reading of enrollment.
Report of enrollment.
Board Bill 140, 144, 145, 147, 141, and 151.
147. All other business being suspended, the President shall in open session affix his signature hereto to the end that these may become law. Alderman from the 19th, you recognize on the motion for our courtesy resolutions calendar.
Mr. President, members of the board, move to approve our courtesy resolution calendar today.
Moved by the Alderman from the 19th, entertain a second. Seconded by the Alderman from the 26th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
First reading of resolutions.
Resolution 180, sponsored by President Reed, Alderwoman Middlebrook, Alderman Kotar, Alderman Oldenburg, Alderman Ornowitz, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaquero, Alderman Vollmer, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Boyd, and Alderman Muhammad. The Board of Aldermen strongly support the efforts by the ownership group to secure an MLS team for the city.
Alderman from the 7th, you recognize on the first reading of resolution 180.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I move to refer Resolution 180 to the HUD's committee.
Moved by the Alderman from the 7th, entertain a second. Seconded by the Alderman from the 10th and 21st. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Madam Clerk, please send resolution 180 to HUD's.
So noted. Resolution 184, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia. The Board of Aldermen expresses its support of the ownership group's application to secure a Major League Soccer team for the city of St. Louis.
Alderman from the 6th, you recognize on the first reading of resolution 184.
Thank you, Mr. President. I withdraw my resolution.
All right, thank you. Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Resolution 184 was withdrawn by the sponsor.
So noted. Resolution 185, sponsored by Alderman Oldenburg, Equitable Infrastructure Growth Program.
Alderman from the 16th, you recognize on the first reading of resolution 185.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I move that we refer Resolution 185 to the Streets Committee, please.
Moved by the Alderman from the 16th, seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Resolution 185 to Streets.
So noted. That is the extent of first reading of resolution.
Second reading.
We have none.
Miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Under announcements, Alderwoman from the 19th, would you like to make the motion for going into closed session under announcements?
Mr. President.
The language right there under announcements.
Give it to me, babe, because I can't see now. Mr. President, members of the board, I'd like to make a motion for the Board of Aldermen meeting shall be closed to the public under the provisions of Section 610.0213 in order to permit the members of the committee to discuss matters related to the hiring, firing, disciplining, or promoting of employees of the Board of Aldermen.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 19th, seconded by the Alderman from the 21st. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Those are Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaquero. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderwoman Boyd, Alderwoman Navarro, President Reed,
Aye.
Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderman Ornowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderwoman Boyd. 23 aye votes.
By a vote, you stay in the motion, Alderwoman from the 19th. We are now going into closed session. I'll ask that all the cameras be turned off. I'll ask everyone who's not a member of the Board of Aldermen to please exit the chambers. Staff, I think we'll be fine without you on this one. So the staff, if you all, and we'll let you know when we come back. Bring in, calling this full board back to order to complete our agenda, and we're out of closed session. Announcements. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 17th.
Mr. President, we'll have a HUD's meeting on the last Wednesday of November. I don't know what date that is, but if somebody needs a bill heard or something, I think we're having a little communication problems. If it's properly advertised, please let the staff know and we'll get it heard that day. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, can you hold on your announcements, and then I'll get Alderman from the 1st.
Congratulations, but I wanted all the official.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I wanted to congratulate, we've been talking about personnel, so our personnel director, Richard Franks, and his partner got married a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to send out a congratulations to Richard Franks and Will, new husband and husband, and one of the judges in our community, over in the circuit clerk's office, not the circuit clerk, circuit judge married them, and I wanted to congratulate them.
You just got Richard in trouble because I didn't get an invite.
Okay, neither did I, but he did get married, and he's very happy. And you all may not know that Richard had been sick, and he's well now and healthy and happy, and I wish him well.
All right, congratulations. Congratulations, Rick, on behalf of the Board of Aldermen. Any further announcements? Madam Clerk?
Tuesday, November 20th, it's a streets, traffic and refuse meeting. And we will be closed Thursday, November 22nd for, Thursday, November 22nd for the Thanksgiving holiday, and Friday, November 23rd for the holiday.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 4th? Hey, Alderman from the 4th, can you hold for a second? Alderman from the 19th has an announcement. She's all right. Alderman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. It is my honor to announce that this Board of Aldermen for the City of St. Louis has unanimously agreed by vote to have our next clerk of this Board of Aldermen to be the Honorable Terry Kennedy.
Congratulations. Congratulations, Alderman.
Mr. President, this board has just created history as well.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to share with us what?
Please proceed, Alderman.
The history is that this is the first African American to be clerk of this board in its entire history. So I want to just let him know that not only is he stepping down to create a better work environment and an opportunity for us to move forward in a more efficient way, but he's also serving as the first, and I do know that he will serve us well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's give him another big round of applause. Congratulations. Alderman from the 4th.
Mr. President, can I be the assistant clerk?
Well, Matt,
I rise to thank Brown and Crouppen attorney firm for buying over 400 turkeys for my ward this year.
oh, wow. Well, thanks to Brown and Cooper, and thanks for you, all the work in your ward. Any further announcements? Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion to excuse.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move that the alderman from the 5th, 22nd, 25th, and 27th be excused for necessary absence.
Moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 26th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman from the 18th, I know you're a stickler about the rules, but I'm going to, I think that the board will not have a problem with us going a little bit out of order at this point and give you an opportunity to address the board prior to our adjournment, just about the new role, if you're prepared to do that. Otherwise, we can wait.
I'm not.
That's awesome. That's the first time I've seen an alderman from the 18th short on words. And not I know. I understand. So, Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move that the board adjourns until Friday, November 23rd, 10 a.m.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 18th.
29th.
The 29th. We got 29th.
Pardon me, 29th.
Yeah, 29th. Moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 8th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Stand adjourned.